In the last video, we pre-processed this landscape photo, but in this one, I want to take it a step further with much more creativity and see if we just can't breathe some life into this and make it look something more like this. Now, whatever you just saw on the screen right now, I don't know what that looked like. I haven't done the edit yet. We're going to do that together. I'm going to be using a lot of curves in this because I really feel like that's a powerful tool that there's limited understanding around. I want you guys to get a feel for just how powerful it is. And then hopefully we'll throw some more of Luminar's more creative tools that are just slider based just to finish it off. So let's see whether we can't take this flat image and turn it into something special. So as I open the develop raw tool here and click the eyeball, we can see our original raw file. And in the last video, I went through these basic settings, which has given us a strong foundation to set us up for editing success. So we're at a perfect place to start our more creative edit. So the first thing that I want to do with this photo is actually crop it in. I wanted to get these lead-in lines kind of leading to the mountain here, but I just feel that we're a little bit too dominant on the right-hand side of the frame. So I'm just going to bring that in. I want to leave a little bit of breathing space between the top of this cloud line here, but I just want to lose a lot of that dense hill that we have on the right hand side. So I'm going to bring this in so that in the center of the frame we have this more interesting mountain in the background and more of these lead in lines with this stream kind of wiggling our way through there. Yeah, something like that. I'll close the crop tool down and straight away we have a much more compelling composition. However, there's some things that I still don't like. I don't like the distracting little part of the stream that we see just here, maybe even this bottom right hand corner as well. So I think I'm going to get rid of those. I'm going to jump into the professional section, open the clone tool, and all we need to do is just sample some of the stones close to the area we want to paint over. So I'm going to borrow from here by clicking. I'm using my left bracket key just to reduce the size of the brush, and now I'm just going to paint over this curvature of the stream here, and I'm going to resample and paint out from there. I'm undecided whether to get rid of this little bit of the stream at the moment, so because I'm not sure, I am just going to leave that. And now we'll jump straight into the develop tool. No longer develop raw, because obviously once we've moved away from that raw edit, as I explained in the last video, we're no longer working on that raw data. That's why we want to get things as accurate as we can right from the start. So now we come in with our more creative edits, and I'm going to be focusing majoritively on the curves. I think I've just made that word up, majoritively. So, okay, quick explanation of curves. Basically, if we bring this point up, like put a point on the curve, bring it up, we're going to brighten the photo up, bring it down, we're going to darken the photo down. We can double click to get rid of points. The point on the far right of this line here, basically that is talking into the very brightest pixels in the photo. So if we bring it down, we're going to darken that down. Anything dropping below this 45-degree line that we see in black here, anything brought below that line is going to be darkened. Anything that goes above that line is going to be brightened. So we can also talk into the blacks here by lifting those up, or the shadows, and moving them along like that as well. One of the most common things that we can do with our curve is to bring down the shadows and then lift up the highlights, and that is what is known as an S-curve, and that is a really great way for adding contrast into our image. So if we see the before and after just of making that shape in the curve, you can see that we've added contrast. The main thing to do when you're creating a curve like this is to be mindful of the fact that you still want the middle point of the curve to cross through the middle point of that 45-degree line. If you do it so it's not going through there, you're actually going to change the brightness values in your photo. So now you see we still have contrast, but we've also made the photo quite a bit brighter by doing that. So just be mindful of making sure that you roughly pass through that middle part of the curve. Now, one of the great things about Luminar that's got an edge over something like Lightroom is we can be specific with where we apply these curves. So for example, we're currently applying that over the whole photo, but we don't have to. We can be more specific with it. So for example, if I just wanted to bring more attention to the stream running through here, I can just add a mask over the stream, and now if we toggle our eyeball before and after, you can see that we've brought that level of contrast to the stream specifically. I don't like how abruptly I applied that, so I'm just going to sort of feather that off with a strength of 50% as well. So here's our before, here's our after. But this tool really helps us craft the light. So what we can do is apply multiple versions of it to really finesse the look we're after. So I'm going to open up a new tool, a new version of the curves tool. And what I'm going to do now is create a custom vignette. So a darkening around the edges, But whereas with the vignette tool, things just kind of get a little bit darker like this, and it would taper off towards that. With a curve, I can be more specific. I can say, I just want to sort of drop down the highlights out of those outer edges. And at the moment, I'm just sort of finessing this so that I get the look around the edge of the photo that I want. Currently, again, we're applying it to the whole photo. But what if we come in with the masking? We could add a radial gradient. And as I click and drag out from that, and now we sort of hide that, you can see that we have a darker edge around our photo now based on the fact that we've applied that curve to it. So this is the curve that we've applied, and we had that circular radial gradient creating this effect take us from this to this. I'm just going to clear that mask and actually go again with that radial gradient. So I'm going to click in the center here and start drawing that out, but I want it to just be a little bit more feathered. So I'm just dragging it beyond the edge of the frame here. Now if I go back out of that, we can see before and after, just a little bit more subtle. But rather than having our attention just to the center of the frame, which I do really like, I feel that we have the essence of the lighting coming from the left-hand side. Although the photo is very flat, that is the direction of the light from the left-hand side. So what I'm going to do is actually erase that darkening effect from in the top left-hand corner, and then I'm actually going to sculpt in some directional light from that direction. There's a lot of directions going on there, but you get what I mean. We're going to come in with light from this top left-hand corner here. So let's jump out of the edit section back into tools, and once again we can open up a brand new develop tool and come back into curves. You've seen me adjust the curve and then apply the mask afterwards, and people often ask, can you do it the other way around? Absolutely. So this time we won't work with a radial gradient. What I think I'll do is actually brush the mask in that I want. So I'm working with a 55% strength of the mask, and I'm just going to sort of paint over these mountains from the top left, bring that down, and then I'm also going to have the brightening effect happening in the center of the frame as well. Something like that. That'll be a good starting point. Obviously, currently we don't see any changes because we haven't made any. So let's jump back into the adjustments here. And now when I start manipulating this curve, we're going to see that it's making changes based on where I painted that mask there. So what we can do is actually just grab that curve and literally just bring the midpoint up. So we're having a brightening effect, elevating the midtones in that part of the photo. In my mind, I want this to be quite a dramatic piece. So what I'm going to do is add more contrast, but do it locally. As I explained before, we can come in and do a universal S-curve to add contrast through our photo, but we can be more refined because we have access to the masks. So what I'm going to do is actually just start darkening down the photo as a whole, get the look I want, and then I'm going to just paint this effect in so that I'm darkening parts of the photo. So now I'm going to come up to my masking, grab the brush, and I'm going to have the strength set fairly low because this is quite a strong effect, and I'm just going to build it up in passes. So we're down at sort of 30%. As soon as I click, we're going to remove the effect, and I'm just painting the mask. Once I let go, we'll see the effect of having that curve adjustment in it. So I'm going to be painting into the areas that I want to darken. And my intention is that I'm going to be sculpting the light, kind of faking the light as if it is coming more directionally from the left-hand side of the frame than what it actually is, just so that we can have a more dramatic edit at the end. So let's have a little toggle of the before and after. That's kind of what I'm going for. And if you feel like you've gone over areas you wish you hadn't, just grab the eraser and just take it back. And we can use the \/ key on the keyboard to see where we've come from. So this is our very flat original file and release, and this is where we've got to. So aside from our initial develop raw processing, pretty much the whole of this edit and the sculpting has been created using curves only. So that shows you just how powerful they are. But there's so much more we can do with our photo editing inside of Luminar Neo that is unique to this program. I'm going to show you some more tools I want to throw at this, including the sun rays filter, maybe some atmosphere AI, possibly a bit of structure to bring out a little bit more pop in the mountains behind, and then maybe just a little bit of color work just to unify the finished image. So let's dive back in and push this image and see if we can't create an art piece from what once was a very flat and dull photo. Let's jump into Structure AI, because what I'm hoping I can do is actually bring a lot more detail and crispness into the mountains, and that's exactly what this tool does. Unfortunately, it's adding too much as a global change to the whole photo. It is just a little bit too extreme. But again, that's why we have masking. So I can actually just paint that into the mountains themselves, or in this case, it might be worth just clicking Mask AI and selecting the mountains and hoping that Luminar does a pretty good job of selecting them. And that's not too bad at all. But if we want to refine it slightly, because it did miss just a little bit down this edge here, we can come in and just correct that. So I'll crank my strength all the way to 100. And I'm not too worried about seeing all the details of the trees here. So what I'm going to do is not remove this effect completely, but just reduce it by half. And so I've put my strength to approximately half, and now I'm erasing that effect. So we've got about 50% of the structure AI here. And then on the left, where the mountain is in the background that I really want to exaggerate, we've got 100% of that effect. So let's toggle our before and our after of that effect, before and after. And I may just remove a little bit of it from the edge, because usually we want our viewer's focus to come to the center of the frame. Okie dokie, how about a little bit of atmosphere AI? What I'd like to do is add some depth perspective by letting the background just fall off into a little bit of haziness. Currently we are set to fog, but what I'd like to do is just play around, see which works. So we've got layered fog here, so there's a little bit of fog just sitting in the valley. I don't mean to close that down, but that's okay. Let's jump to the edits tab here. Let's just have a little look before and after, before and after. It's a little bit too extreme for my liking. What about if we bring the depth forward as well? That's not too bad. If we sort of start to bring the depth of that layered fog forward, it looks a little bit more believable. But again, we can come in and brush this in exactly where we want it. So I'm going to paint this in. I'm going to keep my strength down, I don't know, halfway-ish again. Click and just start painting. So as soon as I want to see the actual filter that I'm applying rather than my mask, I just release. And there we go. We can see the fog has been painted back in that area with currently 44% strength. But now I'm going to double down on that just in this background area here, intensify that and go again and bring it forward. That's pretty good, but because the atmosphere AI brightens our photo where we apply it, we're also brightening up the edge of the frame. And I really want to keep our viewers' attention more central. So I'm just going to flip to the erase and just take a little bit from the side there. And again, and now I'm going to drop the strength and just sort of start feathering that look in. And if you erase too much, just flick back to the paintbrush tool and put it back in. Okay, something like that's looking pretty good. Before and after. And if you feel the overall look is too strong, no problem. We just jump back into the adjustments and we can grab the amount slider and then just bring that back down to where we feel is appropriate. So just toggling between the full amount and none, and just working that slider back and forth until you kind of feel you found the sweet spot, quite like 77%. We'll go with that. Here's our before, here's our after. Let's jump back to our tools, and this time what I'd like to do is add some sun rays filtering in through here. So we just click the sun rays. First thing we want to do is place the sun center and then just crank that amount up again. We're sat at 100 at the moment, so I'm just going to see exactly where these beams are going, what they're doing. So as you see, you're not restricted to placing that sun center on your actual photo. I've taken it off and to the side, and now we can play with the sliders to make sure that we're getting the look that we want from this tool. If I take the overall look down, you can see how contrasty it makes the edges of the frame and very dark. And then if I bump it all the way up, you can see that it's not really affecting the edges. It's just brightening that part where the sun is coming through. Absolutely, this looks really hideous at the moment, but we're going to fix all of that up. It's no problem at all. Now with the penetration slider set to 40, you can see that we're bleaching out over the top of the mountains here. That's certainly not what we want to do. So we're going to grab that and just reduce it until we're not getting that bleaching effect going on. There you go, somewhere around 11, and now we have a more natural look to those rays. We can jump into the sun settings, but because the sun is off the canvas, we're not actually going to see any of these changes. So that's doing nothing for us at the moment, but the ray settings, that's something we want to take a look at. If we push the rays up to 100, it creates finer, thinner beams, but my preference is to actually bring that effect down. And as you bring the number of sun rays down, it just creates this softer kind of feel. And then you can flick through and actually randomize the look until you find something that you like the look of. And I quite like the distribution of those rays, and now I can just drop that amount slider back, and again, just like with the penetration slider when we dropped that down, got rid of the bleaching effect up there. So just by reducing that amount slider, we're able to control that effect. Okay, I'm going to let that settle a little bit and let my eye adjust to decide whether I actually like that. It might be a little bit heavy-handed, and I often say it's worth just stepping away from your work, come back to it with fresh eyes so that you can assess the changes you've made a little more objectively. So that might be what I need to do here. But I wanted just to mention that rather than just applying the sun rays filter once, sometimes for a more realistic effect, it's worthwhile actually doing 2 applications of that tool. One with the sun ray settings at 0, and you can create that nice soft kind of ethereal plume coming out, which is what we've done here, and then get more specific with a second application of the tool where we actually create the fronds of light. So I'm going to attempt to do that, just double up on these tools and see what it looks like. So first of all, I just want to make sure that I'm happy with where this effect is being applied. So I'm just going to grab a linear gradient and drag that down so that we're having the maximum effect of those sun rays up the top, and then it's just going to taper off. So let's have a little look. Before and after, yep, that's quite nice, but I'm just going to drop the amount down because if we're adding another application of this sun rays effect, it could very quickly get away on us. So jump back to the tools, open sun rays, place sun center, crank the amount up, and then position it approximately where we had it last time. And this time let's push the number of sun rays up and just see what that starts to look like. So I've just had a slight repositioning of the sun center there, so before and after, and now again I can come in and just brush this effect in only where I want it. And so I like the way it's sweeping over the mountains there and down on towards the stream here, so not too much, just a little pop before and after, before and after. Okay, it is possible that we're losing a little bit of contrast in this photo as we're applying these faded techniques such as the bleaching of the sun coming through here and also the haze in the background as well. So what I'm going to do is come down to the color harmony section, and I just want to see what color contrast can do for us. So I'm just going to push the amount up and just see how it's looking. Again, I'm at 100%, which is nowhere near where I'm going to want to leave it at, but it's worth doing that, and we can just see the effect of changing the hue and the effect that that has on the photo as we flick that through the different options. Something like that's not too bad in terms of contrast. Before and after, very, very poppy, very excessive. Might be quite a lot more than what I'm after, but you know what, why don't we just put a little bit of this in? No harm in just maybe putting in like 20% of that just in the mountains in the background, bring a little bit more life to them, and also through the meandering river through the middle as well. Let's have a little look. Before and after, yeah, just a bit more emphasis there. I like that. So now let's see if we can't unify these colors a little bit. We've got a lot of blue, green, yellow. The spectrum's a little bit all over the place at the moment, and so we'll see what we can do about that. And if you're not sure where the offending colors exist in your photo, just grab the saturation slider, boost it up, and that will give you a really good representation of what you need to deal with. And so I may just leave that all the way at 100 for now, and that's going to allow me to come in and fine tune my hue, saturation and luminance of the specific colors. So the first one I want to deal to is the blue. I'm just going to bring that down just ever so slightly to desaturate that. And I like the idea of a complementary color scheme, so I'm going to work with the yellows we have over here and actually push them more towards an orange. I don't need to go too extreme with that. And then grab the oranges themselves and move those over more in towards the red spectrum. And then anything that we have that is red, we can actually push that towards orange as well. It's looking absolutely ghastly, but we know we've got the right colors now. So now I can come into my oranges and just drop those down. The same for the yellows as well. And the next thing I want to do is see if I can't talk into the greens over here. I don't really want too much of green in my color palette. So let's jump into the hue. It's probably the cyans that we need to sort out. So yeah, we'll grab the cyans and push those towards blue, and hopefully that will talk into those, and the greens and push them more towards cyan. But it's not really hitting what I'm after. So let's just grab the saturation slider and just start to pull out the color of the greens themselves. Okay, now we can come back and we'll double click the saturation, and just like that it's going to look very undersaturated, and we'll look at our before and after. But you can see just by doing that subtle change, we're actually creating a more harmonized color palette. I think I'm just going to push the oranges back up in saturation, just control those blues. And I also think that we're getting a little bit too bright and overexposed on these oranges, and that's where our luminance section can come in, because I'm hoping that if I grab that and start dropping it down, we're going to darken those oranges, which we are. I don't want all of the oranges dropped, maybe just this area here. Perhaps that was more in the yellows. Okay, I like what it's doing, but I don't want to affect the rest of these changes. So what I'm going to do is close that color tool down, open a new one, and then those changes that I want to make, I can just mask them in only where I want them. So I'm going to darken down those oranges and the yellows just here, and now I can just paint it in over that area. Let's have a little toggle of before and after, great. Okay, I think we're getting pretty close, so I'm going to finish things off by jumping back into the develop section. I want to create more of a distinction between the very bright stream that's meandering through here and the grey stones next to it. So what I'm going to do is just grab my curve and just start bringing that down, and I'm definitely darkening off everything there, but I just want to make sure I'm not darkening the stream itself. So I'll lift the highlights back up, and we're getting very dark around the edges of the frame, but I do know that I'm just going to be masking this in only where I want it. But let's boost up the shadows just so that we are putting in a little bit of protection for those dark areas. So now we're just going to come in, mask this in. Again, I'm going to start with my brush with a low amount, 29 is fine. And I'm getting exactly the opposite of what I want because I'm erasing, not painting. But that's okay, I could either start again with that, or an alternative that we could do is jump into the mask actions. If we just show the mask, we can see what's going on. We want to invert that so we get the opposite of what we were just creating. And now when I come to my brush, I will make sure that I am in the paint mode, and I'm going to be painting that effect in where the mask is going right now. Currently, when I release my mouse, I'm not seeing anything, and that is because I'm still on the show mode of the mask. I don't want to see the mask, I just want to see the effect that I'm creating. So here we go. Possibly getting a little bit too dark around the front here, so we'll just remove that a little bit. And we're going to close that down, and I think I'm going to try a little bit of the dramatic slider. Why not? You know, let's see what it does for us. That's quite a punchy look. Let's have a little play with the local contrast, see what that's doing for us. Far too extreme, but look, why don't we put a little bit of the dramatic filter in? Obviously we have to put some of my favorite filter, the mystical filter, in, because that's just going to give us a nice soft dreamy glow before and after. Yep, maybe a little bit too strong, drop that back. And just to finish it off, let's tie things together with a lookup table. So I'm going to jump into the creative. It doesn't matter which one we pick to start with. Smoky normally looks quite good if you want like a dated feel. And what I normally like to do is crank the amount to 100, as I've alluded to before, and that will let you actually come in and fine tune the overall look of the mood that you're applying, before later you just come back and reduce the amount to somewhere that's more appropriate. So here's our before, here's our after. It just gives the photo a bit more color unity. So before and after. As I glance my eye around the frame of the photo, there are still a couple of things that really draw my attention that I wish they didn't. And one of them is this little bit of stream in the bottom right corner. I find it really visually distracting, and I think that if we get rid of it, our eye will focus much more on the stream meandering through the center of the frame. And even this little bit in the foreground here, I find it just holds your eye down at the bottom of the photo. So let's come in, grab the clone tool for one last time, and this is the last thing that we're going to do. We're going to sample our source and just paint over the top of that stream. And then if you start to see patterns replicating like we do here, you can just sample from a different area, steal from there as well. And there we go, a little bit of a cleanup just so that we get rid of those distractions in the bottom part of the frame. Okay, it's time for my favorite bit, which is our before and after. Let's take a look. Here's our starting photo. It's pretty bland, not much going on, no contrast, no direction of light. And here is the photo edit that we've been able to sculpt using Luminar Neo. In particular, a lot of usage of the curves there. Here's our before, here's our after. Those of you that follow this photo editing channel regularly will know that one of the things I am the best at is over processing my photos, particularly when I'm recording live for you guys. It's very hard to be subjective while I'm also trying to teach. So I may have overcooked this one. And if that's something you're guilty of as well, and you wish there was a slider that would just reduce the overall effect of your photo editing, there isn't one. But I have come up with a workaround, which I've covered in a previous video, and I'm going to link to that right there. So if you want to check out my little hack for reducing your overall effect, go see me in that video. I thank you for watching. Before you go, let me know what you thought of the edit. I'd really appreciate it. Cheers for watching, guys. Bye for now. See you over there.